I haven't been this excited about a new video game in a long time. Butcher's Creek is the latest game from prolific indie developer David Szymanski. I've referenced his work on my channel, even reviewing his game Finger Bones just recently, and man, that game did a number on me. The nihilistic, bleak themes and the dark, unsatisfying conclusion stuck with me for days afterwards. It was depressing but highly effective and memorable. However, gameplay-wise, there was nothing more than simply walking around and punching in a few codes on a console. But what if we took the log-based storytelling of Finger Bones, as well as some truly grim subject matter, and added in a brutal, pulpy first-person combat system influenced by Condemned criminal origins? Well, then we would have Butcher's Creek, silly.
You fucking penis!
It's rare that I cover brand new games, so with that said, I won't spoil anything major in the plot of Butcher's Creek. The basic premise is that you play as a troubled loner with a love of cinematic gore. He's heard tell of a group creating genuine snuff films near the town of Butcher's Creek, Pennsylvania, and goes searching. After exploring an abandoned sawmill, he's captured and prepped to be another victim, referred to as meat. The story is delivered in the log-based method that we've seen in several other Szymanski games, and as I said in my Finger Bones review, I love this style. It lets me put a voice and a face to each character. There's even a plot-related reason why the characters communicate via letters. Now, you know I love Metal Gear, but for a game like this, reading about what happened is far more interesting to me than being hit over the head with choreography and cinematography. The story here isn't a winding, twisting tale of betrayal and double crosses and transatlantic war games, and thank goodness, frankly. The plot is wild, but fairly straightforward, and I really enjoyed my time with the group of torturers, Travis, Isaac, Barry, and Jack. Poor Jack. And Mitch, even dumbass Mitch. Although they're evil people that revel in their work, you do get somewhat of a sense of friendship and bond between them as the story progresses. Make no mistake, their cruelty is true and upsetting, with one of the characters blatantly insulting another member in his last moments, but their motivations are beyond plain sadism. There is an actual explanation for why they perform their gruesome acts and film them, and it's about as bizarre as you'd expect from one of these games. Especially the ending. Holy crap, the ending. I was laughing out loud in sheer disbelief. I absolutely loved it. So, like I said, there's a bit more depth to the lore, but I wouldn't dare spoil the big plot points here. I will say, however, that the promise about Butcher's Creek expanding David Szymanski's so-called nightmare world introduced in previous games is a promise that was fulfilled indeed. The town of Dusk is referenced as only a few miles away from Butcher's Creek, but it's not referenced by name, and there's a reason for that. Also referenced, and perhaps played around in a little bit, is a certain factory. And hey, looky there. Either way, if you're a fan of this guy's work, you'll be satisfied, I promise. Make no mistake though, the subject matter here is pretty brutal. The obvious snuff film motif will turn some away, but if you pay close attention, it gets even more depraved. The gang frequents a local adult club adorned with images of voluptuous women in their undergarments. But the men don't go here to blow off steam. Oh no. They watch the women to make themselves even angrier about their repressed sexuality, thus increasing their barbarism and debauchery in their snuff film work. They also recruit their wives, sisters, and grandmothers to dance for them. Eesh. But it's not all gloom and doom. The loner makes a comment about being nude on the stage, which was funny, and like I said, the ending of the game was hilariously absurd, and the notes involving Mitch are miniature dark comedy masterpieces. But down to brass tacks. The title is not clickbait. Butcher's Creek is violent with a capital V, and it all starts with what you see. Yeah, I wasn't kidding. Butcher's Creek is not for the timid. But, thankfully, it doesn't cross over into Cornyville, where games like Agony and Hatred languish in mediocrity forevermore. Developed in Unity, Butcher's Creek evokes that distinct video nasty aesthetic to a perfect degree. Now, I'm biased because I'm a massive fan of VHS horror, and several of my thumbnails have this visual flair on purpose. But this is done just right in Butcher's Creek. The grainy overlay sets the mood without becoming obnoxious. I never had trouble seeing where I needed to go, nor were important items ever unintentionally obscured. And that abrupt blue screen when you fail is bang on for those of us who came up on VHS tapes. And look, he's wearing boots before getting captured this time. A correction from the demo, thank you very much. Aside from the gruesome combat, and we're getting to that, the brutality on screen is observed after the fact. Now, it's not left entirely in your imagination as it was in Fingerbones. You can clearly see the end result of the horrors inflicted on people by this gang. Seeing the various muscles and bones strewn about is obviously grotesque, but when you read the descriptions of exactly how the victims were tortured while staring at the aftermath, it's pretty rough. And all of this is enhanced further thanks to old camcorders propped up on tripods, pointing right at where the action happened. There's a victim near the very end of the game, propped up on a dirty old chair. Head gone, skinned torso, just resting there. I noticed the femurs had been removed, and gravity was pulling the quadriceps tissue down, causing them to droop over the empty cavity where the bones used to be. And that image kind of fucked with me. Seeing random bits and pieces lying around wasn't so bad, it's a game after all, but because I knew the context behind this particular body, my mind quickly made up how horrific and painful this process would have been. Also, thank you for not using the old seeing ghosts trope. I didn't need to watch a hallucinatory replay with translucent blue apparitions begging for their lives. I appreciate that the game respected my imagination's ability to fill in the rest. Though the game has that deliberately retro visual style like the rest of Szymanski's work, that doesn't mean the modeling isn't gorgeous. You can tell, obviously, that you're looking at a video game, but certain everyday objects like cans of WD-40 or box cutters look really good. I know it sounds minuscule, and perhaps it is, but I have such an affinity for little things like that. It's this weird intersection between outlandish fantasy and plain ordinary objects that satisfies this odd part of my brain. There are only, I think, 4 character models total, not including the first-person Tootsies, but I really like how each character is designed, with the grounded, brutal look of a Manhunt gang and the absurd tie-dye pony factory model. And B, that number might be limited, but at least it's justified from a story perspective, with one note referencing the required uniform and how uncomfortable it is. And hey, it's a short independent game, it's not The Witcher. I love the flannel, burlap sack, balaclava, and jeans mix. And it all just fits with the cold Appalachian 80s theme. And the tie-dye pony factory outfit is just kind of fun. Animations have that stilted retro feel to them, a throwback to the days of hand-drawn animation from games of yore. As someone who spent a lot of time with the original PlayStation as a kid, I never get tired of seeing animations like this. Blocking and striking looks great, obviously heavily inspired by Condemned, and I felt a genuine sense of impact during combat, which is crucial as this is a major part of the game. Also, the Polaroid animation reminds me of Viewfinder, only infinitely less cheery. Anyway. The lighting in this game is gorgeous. If you watched my recent Splinter Cell review, you heard me rant about why I love this stuff so much, so I won't run that track again, but suffice it to say, Butcher's Creek has its share, and it was lovely. Seeing this large radio tower intermittently lit up by the red safety lighting amidst the pitch black forest was striking and beautiful. As was the level design overall, there are plenty of rusting metal, wooden, and concrete areas that give you that sense of cold indifference, but then you have the magic fairy castle. This funny little place is where they, quote, skin the mean ones. This dingy, rotten house covered in happy, childlike decor and poorly strewn up Christmas lights in front of a torso staked to a wall with railroad ingots is uncomfortable. And the happy-go-lucky vibe juxtaposed against this violence made me itch. But I tell you what, this would be the perfect haunted house attraction. Oh, and if you're wielding a weapon with an edge, enemies can lose their noodle in the middle of battle. The first time this happened, I went, oh shit! I wasn't expecting it, but there you are. I also pulled this off by kicking a wooden chair at a man once. Seriously, so sometimes there are some wonky physics, that's a powerful bubble for instance, but this is nitpicking, and the wooden chair thing was just funny. Although, I have to say, I did experience a bug in the mines where my inputs stopped working. I couldn't grab objects, kick, or strike, but in less than 30 seconds, I backed out, reloaded my save, and it was fixed, and it only happened once. I also caught a few enemies staring at a wall right in front of their face, Blair Witch style, but overall their pathfinding and aggression was on point the remainder of the time. So as far as technical difficulties, this game was honestly impressive for day one, and I never had to crash to desktop once. Aside from the grunge, there are those moments when you can stop and observe some incredible designs, like this gothic, nearly Transylvanian structure. Anyway, goddammit, I'm rambling, but I'm thrilled to say the game sounds just as good as it looks. The sound design in Butcher's Creek. Oh yeah. Every strike, block, and kick is appropriately gloopy, and killing blows have that sick, semi-liquid crunch to them, which is ultra satisfying. The voice acting is pretty simple. The protagonist does the same exasperated taunt that Ethan Thomas did when winding up for the killing blow. It was a subtle but much appreciated homage to Condemned. The gang members are gruff and nasty, and when they yell things like, it adds a ferocity to the combat. There are some more subtle, creepy effects, like the approaching footsteps in the forest. Nothing ever shows up, but it feels like something is right next to you. It reminded me of the forest trail in Silent Hill 2. It's that perfect eldritch horror, something this game has a whole lot of. The majority of the game's soundtrack perfectly complements the violent, austere tone of each level. The sounds of dripping pipes running over the industrial, rusty ambiance and the grimy synth filling in the low end, it reminds me of Craig Connor's perfect, timeless ambient music from Manhunt without feeling like it's biting off that work. It's music after my own heart, but it's not all spooky stuff. Some of the songs in this game are proper freaking jams. The greasy fat track that plays in the club is memorable, and it adds to the strange dark humor of the situation that you found yourself in, insofar as you're a nude fat guy on a stage built for Rubenesque dancers. And the heavy track that plays over the final enemy gauntlet is evocative of some of the music from Dusk. Oh, Dusk, how I love playing that game. Oh, speaking of which, alright, so this is where the money's at. The first-person combat is modeled on Condemned Criminal Origins. You strike, block, and kick just like Ethan Thomas. The only thing missing are the finishing moves, but this game has its own tricks that push it past where Condemned left off many years ago. The Loner, which by the way is not his true name, has a stamina bar, but unlike Ethan Thomas, it's not just for sprinting, but for kicking and striking as well. Learning how to balance stamina output during combat is essential to survival, because if you get sloppy, you will die quickly. Which I love. It's not overly punishing, and it doesn't require hours of practice to master or anything like that, but learning enemy attack patterns and timing your parry is crucial, especially on hard. The good news is, a proper parry replenishes your stamina meter. It's also vital that you learn to use your other abilities. The Loner is on the hunt for real gore, and thus he brought his Polaroid camera to capture the memories. The system is very user-friendly, and there's a really odd sense of relief when you find horrific violence to boost your own health. It's memorable to say the least. But it ties directly into the combat as well. Once you get used to the parry mechanic, kicking, throwing your weapon, and using your camera offensively, you can go into a surprisingly elaborate flow state. It's not Devil May Cry 3 or anything, shout out Royal Guards, but hitting enemies with a Polaroid flash to stun them, kick a barrel, bum rush to attack, run backwards, kick to create distance, throw your weapon that's almost broken, and then rip a new pipe off the wall, parry to get your stamina back, and then bludgeon motherfuckers is really satisfying. Oh, and make sure you break out that camera after a battle. You get an extra 2 HP for fresh blood. Yeah, your weapons have conditions too. It's a meter on the UI, it's not hard to manage, and you're never far from a new one, so go nuts. And, unlike Condemned, you never use a special weapon as a key or anything, so there's no need to hoard. But, like Condemned, weapons also have associated values. Damage output, speed, the condition they're in. I love it, because it actually makes finding a wrench exciting when all you have is a pocket knife. But there are so many tools at your disposal. Hammers, spanners, boards, pipes, pliers, shovels, a double-edged axe, and my personal favorite, a sledgehammer like the one Leatherface used. You also get a large amount of health by finding extra nasty Polaroid photos, as well as carrying VHS tapes. The whole tape thing in Butcher's Creek is especially clever. Thematically, it's cool, but there's also a plot-related reason why these things exist, which was a nice touch. You use these tapes to save when you find a CRT TV, but equally as important, carrying tapes grants you a greater health pool, plus 5 HP per tape. So you might be tempted to save in case you get whacked and want to avoid replaying several minutes again, but you can gamble and hang on to your tapes for that greater health reservoir. Thankfully, on normal, I never had a shortage of tapes and could save pretty regularly, so don't be too concerned, it's quite fair. Of course, this is different on hard mode, but that's hard mode, it's the point. Otherwise, you can locate doors that accept tapes as payment to open, granting you special items like nasty Polaroids or beefier weapons like the sledgehammer. I unlocked every door in the game to the best of my knowledge, and I was never hurting for tapes, so it's pretty forgiving, and there's usually an extra tape in there anyway. I will say, I kind of hope an extra difficulty gets added someday, maybe call it snuff or hardcore in a nod to Manhunt, where you only get a single tape per playthrough or something like that. I don't know, I'm just throwing it out there. So, speaking of which, this game is much more Condemned than it is Manhunt gameplay-wise, so unfortunately, the search for Manhunt 3 continues. However, there are times when enemies will be facing away from the player and you can sneak up and execute them. It's not a purposeful execution, insofar as there's no icon to perform the movement, or a third-person camera with a special animation, or anything like that, and there is no proper stealth mechanic per se. But, and I definitely could be reaching here, I'd like to think that this was a little nod to our favorite stealth series that will never come back.
Subscribe to the Patreon. Listen to and download the music that you hear in these videos. Get the videos early, exclusive content. Patreon.com youtube.com/hypertension Johnny. Go.
You also get a chance to use the environment to waste your foes too, and it's hilarious. Big fire spouts coming out of the ground, spinning axles with saw blades attached to them, a giant hole in the earth, and so forth. It's really satisfying to maneuver around enemies and just start spamming the mighty foot until they smash into the object. There are a handful of small puzzles in the game as well. It's nothing brain-busting. I mean, we're talking a note that says, "Hey, go look at this thing," and then you check the thing. You find a removable part, and then you insert the said part on the other thing. You do get the occasional Resident Evil-esque object to open certain doors, but it's usually just a big old iron key and you're set. There is randomly a more traditional puzzle late in the game. Obviously I won't spoil the solution, but it was cool to see. This stuff is hardly theoretical physics, but it broke up the combat from time to time. And here's my only real complaint about Butcher's Creek. And it's not even that bad, but as much as I love the combat in this game, and I really do, I cannot wait to play this game again. I will say that by around the very end of the game, I was kinda ready to be done. The enemy variety is limited, not only in appearance, but in their capabilities. It's sort of the same thing the entire time, and there are no boss fights to mix things up. There is no Jacob here. I loved the ending, but frankly, I was kind of expecting a grand showdown and got something else entirely. Speaking of which, so minor spoilers. I'm not going to ruin the end of the game or the story or anything like that, but I want to talk briefly about the final battle, so if you want to go into this completely blind, skip ahead to this time code. So, instead of a final boss battle, we pick up a unique weapon, a pickaxe with unlimited condition, and you run through what is essentially a final gauntlet of enemies. But unfortunately, it's just all the same bad guys you've been fighting the entire time, just in higher quantities. The pickaxe is cool, and the bitchin' music behind the action ramps the intensity up, but in the end, it's just more of the same. This would have been the perfect time for maybe one single gun in the entire game. How awesome would it have been to find the shotgun from Dusk and get a big final overpowered run of boundless slaughter? And then maybe you run out of ammo right as you reach the Watcher. It's a somewhat so-so finish, but at least the last cutscene is, once again, perfectly crazy and funny as heck. Alright, spoilers are done, promise. I'm not trying to sound ungrateful. I'm well aware that outside of a little bit of help, this is essentially a one-man project. And again, I cannot emphasize enough that what is here is excellent. It took me about 200 minutes to complete the game, with consideration for notes and the occasional sip of coffee. The game full price is $9. That's 4.5 pennies per minute, which is more than fair in this wonderfully dystopian world we're headed for. Man, it's weird to discuss this portion of the review. Most games I cover are from the glory days, and as I type this, Butcher's Creek released about, 8 hours ago? But it seems like the hype is real amongst fans of indie games, horror games, and Szymanski games. Personally, I've been anticipating this eagerly for nearly a year now, and playing the demo a couple months ago left me aching for more. I don't know what time has in store for the legacy of Butcher's Creek, but I can say with confidence that the game lived up to my expectations, and I can only hope that this video inspires you to give it a try. It's super violent, Lovecraftian, and bizarre, and certainly not for everyone. But aside from all the superlatives used in this script, the most important thing about Butcher's Creek is that from start to finish, I had a lot of fun playing this game, and I'm pretty sure that's the whole point. It's a wonderful callback to some of my favorite video games of all time, like Manhunt and Condemned Criminal Origins. As the landscape of AAA gaming further devolves into a minefield of lazy copy-and-paste designs, meaningless corporate virtue signaling, and predatory business schemes designed to milk your sagging teats, it's relieving that games like this are having their renaissance. Now we just have to wait patiently for the secret agent wizard boy for that glorious return to PS1 Hogwarts.
Go on a date, you fat bitch!
Shepard Commander. Shepard Commander.
God damn it!